All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Imagine, for a second, a scenario where cutting-edge astrophysics collides directly, head-on, with profound spiritual submission. Today, we're exploring an absolutely incredible true story that completely blurs the lines between strict empirical science and the deepest, most foundational levels of faith. So, here's a question for you. How do you bow to the earth when you are literally falling through the infinite void? I mean, it sounds like a philosophical riddle, right? But on the 30th day of a joint International Space Station mission, an astronaut adrift in the absolute vacuum of space found himself facing this exact, physically impossible scenario. Now let's look at how quickly things go from a totally routine spacewalk to an absolute nightmare. In just minutes, a micrometeorite strikes the station. Bam. The impact is so severe it completely snaps the safety tether holding Zayed, who is a brilliantly talented Middle Eastern aerospace engineer, by the way. Suddenly, he's totally untethered. His thrusters? Dead. He is drifting helplessly out into the pitch-black void, while his co-pilot, Dr. Miller, is just screaming over the comms that he cannot be reached. Section 1. Calculating the Space Cubula. The intersection of faith and orbital mechanics. To really grasp how Zayed faced this horrific zero chance of survival moment, we actually need to rewind a bit and look at his preparation. Before launch, his mother tearfully asked him a fascinating question. How on Earth, or rather how in space, would he find the Qibla, the direction of prayer, while spinning 400 kilometers above the planet? Well, he didn't just guess. Relying on Islamic fiqh, he built this incredibly complex computational algorithm right on his laptop. He literally combined orbital mechanics and the station's trajectory to compute the exact coordinates of Mecca every single second. Pretty amazing, right? And this brilliantly illustrates the core tension of our whole explainer. On one hand, you have Dr. Miller. He's an atheist, a strict physicist, and he actually openly mocked Zayed, asking if anyone was really listening to prayers aimed at a, quote, spinning blue ball. On the other hand, you have Zayed, beautifully balancing mathematical precision with unwavering devotion. But here's the thing. Even with that brilliant algorithm, Zayed initially really struggled to perform a proper prayer in zero gravity. He was having to hold his knees just to stop from floating away. Missing that feeling of his forehead touching the ground, he started wondering if his suspended, weightless prayers were even valid. Section 2. A mechanical miracle, finding ground without gravity. Okay, let's go back to that climax in the void. Facing the absolute, terrifying certainty of death, Zayed stares at his suit's tablet. He realizes something profound. The Earth is entirely up from his perspective. The whole planet is his Qibla now. So what does he do? He surrenders completely. He calls out, Ya Allah, I used to prostrate on the ground in the world, but here there is no ground. You be my Qibla. You are El Ali, the highest. Floating upside down in the pitch black, he mimics the posture of prayer, reciting Subhana Rabbi al-Ala, glory be to my Lord, the Most High. He completely submits his entire existence. And guys, right at that exact moment of ultimate surrender, the completely unexplainable happens. A robotic arm on the outside of the station, an arm that was broken, mind you, and meant only for solar panel repair, suddenly resets its sensors. Overriding its normal behavior, it alters its path to avoid a collision, reaches out, grabs Zayd's suit handle, and pulls him straight back to the airlock, where a frantic Dr. Miller manages to drag a shaking Zayd inside. Once they're inside, a totally stunned Dr. Miller demands to know how a broken robot could possibly function like that. And Zayd's response? It's just so profound. He tells Miller, I didn't face the Qibla, I faced Allah. He realized out there in the expanse that the essence of sujood doesn't actually mean touching your head to the physical soil. It means the absolute surrender of the soul. He even suggests to Miller that maybe, just maybe, this profound submission was the very thing that programmed that broken machine. Section 3. Redefining the sujood, the theological explainer. So the crucial point here is how this whole life or death experience forces us to look at two foundational Islamic concepts. Tawakkul, which is absolute reliance on God, and asbab, the utilization of worldly logical means. I mean, think about it. We all balance preparation and trust in our daily lives, right? Zayed clearly used asbab by building his complex algorithm. But out in the void, with his thrusters totally dead and his science failing him, he transitioned entirely to tawakkul, absolute, unfiltered trust. And this experience revealed a massive shift in perspective for Islamic astronomers and scholars rethinking the fiqh of space prayer. Down here on Earth, we use soil as the medium, right? The hadith states the earth is made a mosque and is pure for believers. But in space, the empty void itself becomes the medium. It shows that when the physical ground is completely stripped away, the true goal of sujood remains the same, the total submission of the heart. In this scenario, God acts as al-Muqaddir, the ultimate planner operating entirely outside natural laws. Zayd really discovered firsthand what it means to recognize God as as-Samad, the independent, and al-Qayyum, the sustainer. It's a pretty profound reminder for all of us. When the physical ground literally vanishes, when all human control is stripped away in our own lives, what actually sustains us? It's that absolute sustaining presence. Section 4. The Physicist's Diary, the Earthly Aftermath. Let's look at the emotional aftermath once these two men safely returned to Earth. For Zayed, his entire spiritual paradigm had shifted. During his very first earthly prayer back in his local mosque, he wept loudly. And he wasn't crying because he finally had soil beneath his forehead again. No, he was crying out of sheer awe, realizing that his most desperate, terrifying prayer was accepted in the completely empty void, entirely without it. Meanwhile, Dr. Miller was doing what Dr. Miller does best, grappling with the data. As a strictly empirical physicist, he actually sat down and calculated the quantum probability of that broken robotic arm resetting and moving in that precise manner at that exact second. The number he got? Less than 0.0001%. Statistically speaking, it was an absolute, undeniable impossibility. But, as Miller noted in his diary, Zayd called it Allah's 100% probability. Think about that for a second. This brilliant physicist, a guy who had literally built his entire worldview on perfectly predictable planetary orbits, was violently forced to confront an event that defied every single piece of empirical logic and physics he possessed. We'll leave you with Miller's final haunting diary entry. He writes about looking up at the sky from Earth, a sky he'd always believed was just a cold, empty vacuum. But now, he writes, Zayd found Allah out there, and I am left standing here. Maybe I, too, will have to learn sujood one day. It's such a powerful realization. It leaves us all to wonder, what are the true limits of our science? And what is the absolute power of faith in the vast, unimaginable canvas of the universe? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it gave you something incredible to think about.